All right, let's jump into another deep dive. And today we're heading to Tamil Nadu.
Ooh, spicy.
Yeah, it is. It's going to get a little bit spicy. Today we're going to Tamil Nadu, a state in India
Right.
known for its vibrant culture and even more vibrant politics.
Yeah.
Recently, Tamil Nadu has been clashing with the central government. And
Mm.
this is about more than just like boring policy stuff. This
Yeah.
is about language identity. Who gets to decide Tamil Nadu's future?
Yeah, it's so fascinating how one comment in Parliament just like set off this whole firestorm.
Oh, really?
So you see, the Union Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, brought up a historical figure who supposedly called the Tamil language barbaric.
Okay, I can already see how that would ruffle some feathers.
Huge no-no in Tamil Nadu.
Yeah, so like, why is this such a big deal? Help me understand the context here.
So the historical figure in question is Periyar, and in Tamil Nadu, he's basically a rock star. He's considered the father of the Dravidian movement, a social justice movement that really challenged traditional hierarchies and championed Tamil identity. So criticizing Periyar is like criticizing Tamil culture itself.
So Sitharaman kind of stepped on a cultural landmine with that comment.
Yeah, for sure.
So what happened next?
Well, Tamil Nadu's Deputy Chief Minister, Udhanidi Stalin, fired back with some pretty fiery rhetoric of his own. He essentially accused the central government of treating the people of Tamil Nadu as uncivilized, just turning the whole insult right back on them. It was a pretty dramatic exchange.
Wow, things are heating up. So this historical figure and the barbaric comment seems to be symbolic of a larger issue here.
Absolutely. This whole incident threw gasoline on an already smoldering fire.
Oh,
The debate over the NEP 2020, the National Education Policy, this policy includes a controversial three-language formula that has a lot of people in Tamil Nadu very worried about the future of their language.
I'm all ears. Break down this three-language policy. What's the big concern here?
Okay, so the NEP proposes that all students learn three languages, their mother tongue English and another Indian language.
Okay.
Now, the policy doesn't say you have to choose Hindi as that third language,
Right.
but many in Tamil Nadu fear it'll create pressure to do so, potentially sidelining their own language. They see it as kind of a subtle way to impose Hindi dominance.
So it's not just about learning another language, it's about potential cultural and linguistic dominance.
Exactly, and this fear of Hindi imposition has really deep roots in Tamil Nadu's history.
Correct.
There's a long-standing resistance to what they see as attempts to marginalize the Tamil language and culture.
This reminds me of something Tamil Nadu's Finance Minister Palladiv Altagarajan said about the NEP.
Yeah.
He compared it to using the same syllabus for kindergarten and college students.
Oh, yeah.
A pretty striking analogy, don't you think?
Yeah, it really highlights that concern that a one-size-fits-all approach to education might not work in a country as diverse as India, especially when it comes to language policy.
And of course, this wouldn't be a good political drama without some counter-arguments. So the BJP Tamil Nadu President K. Annamalai had something to say about all this.
He did Annamalai essentially accused Tyagarajan of hypocrisy,
Oh,
pointing out that Tyagarajan sends his own children to schools where they learn English and a foreign language.
gotcha.
So it's kind of a do as I say, not as I do argument, you know?
Right, right. So calling him out for potentially benefiting from the system he's criticizing,
Yeah.
that adds another layer of intrigue to this whole situation.
It does. And speaking of adding fuel to the fire, Chief Minister M.K. Stalin jumped into the fray and labeled the NEP a saffronized policy.
Okay, saffronize. Unpack that term for me. What's the significance there?
So saffron is a color closely associated with Hinduism and importantly Hindu nationalism,
Okay.
which the BJP is a part of. So by using this term, Stalin is implying that the NEP is driven by a particular religious and political agenda
Uh-huh.
and that it's being imposed on Tamil Nadu.
Sounds like he's suggesting this isn't just about education, but it's about ideology and control. This is getting pretty intense.
It's heating up.
Did the central government respond to these accusations?
Oh, they did in a very dramatic fashion, I might add.
Okay, tell me.
Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan took to social media and shared what appeared to be a consent letter from Tamil Nadu's education department, seemingly proving that they had agreed to the NEP.
Wait, hold on. He's trying to say Tamil Nadu is playing the victim when they actually signed off on this policy?
Yeah.
This feels like a major plot twist.
Definitely does, but like any good drama, there's always more to the story.
I'm already hooked. This is way more than just a political squabble. This
Yeah.
is a clash of cultures, ideologies, and power.
Mm.
Where do we go from here? What happens next?
Well, that's what we're going to explore next. This standoff has some pretty big implications, not just for Tamil Nadu, but for the idea of India as a nation with diverse languages and cultures.
I'm on the edge of my seat. This is fascinating.
So we've got Tamil Nadu basically saying no way to this three-language policy,
Right.
and the central government standing firm on implementing it, a real classic standoff.
Yeah,
What do you think are the possible outcomes here?
that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, historically, Tamil Nadu has been pretty successful at pushing back against what they see as Hindi imposition.
Mhm.
They've got a really strong sense of their own linguistic identity,
Right.
and their leaders haven't been shy about standing up to the central government.
You're right. And in the past, that combination has forced the central government to compromise, but this time with the BJP in power.
Yeah,
Feels different, wouldn't you say?
I was just thinking the same thing. The BJP has a strong emphasis on cultural unity,
Yeah.
and they see Hindi as a key part of that. So
Mhm.
their approach to the NEP might be more about promoting Hindi as like the unifying language for all of India.
That's a really insightful observation, and it creates a direct clash with the idea of linguistic diversity and the right of each state to preserve its own language and culture.
It's almost like we're seeing a microcosm of a global debate, right?
Yeah.
Globalization versus localization.
Yeah.
This push for uniformity versus the desire to protect unique identities.
That's a brilliant analogy. And in India, this tension between unity and diversity is built into the very fabric of the nation.
Right.
This standoff in Tamil Nadu is really putting that tension front and center.
So let's play out some scenarios here. What happens if Tamil Nadu just digs in its heels and refuses to implement the three-language policy? Could the central government retaliate?
They definitely could. I mean, the central government controls a lot of funding, so they could use that as leverage to try and pressure Tamil Nadu into compliance.
But wouldn't that be a risky move politically? I mean, Tamil Nadu is a
Yeah.
huge state. Alienating them could have consequences for the BJP in future elections.
Hmm.
Plus, it would just feed into that narrative that they aren't sensitive to regional differences and that they're trying to impose their ideology on everyone.
Exactly. It'd be a high-stakes gamble for the BJP.
Yeah.
So what's the alternative? Is there a compromise that could work for both sides?
Well, could the central government offer more flexibility in how the three-language policy is implemented?
Uh-huh.
Like maybe give states more options for the third language they choose,
Yeah.
including other South Indian languages.
Now, that's a thought-provoking idea. Giving states more autonomy in choosing that third language would address the concern about Hindi imposition, and it would be in line with the spirit of cooperative federalism, where the central government and states work together as partners.
But even with a compromise like that, I imagine there would still be some in Tamil Nadu who see the NEP as a threat to their cultural identity.
Mm-hmm.
This goes beyond just practical considerations, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's about deeply held beliefs about identity history, who gets to define what it means to be Tamil,
Right.
and whether that definition aligns with the central government's vision of a unified India.
This whole situation really highlights the complexity of Indian democracy. You have a state government that's willing to challenge the central government
Right.
and a public debate happening on a very sensitive issue. Those are signs of a healthy democracy.
I couldn't agree more. But at the same time, these anxieties about language, culture, identity, they reveal some fault lines within Indian society.
Yeah.
It shows that the project of national integration is still a work in progress.
So it's both encouraging and concerning, at the same time encouraging to see these democratic processes playing out,
Mm-hmm.
but concerning that there's still this underlying tension around unity and diversity. What does this conflict tell us about the bigger picture, about the state of linguistic diversity in India today? This conflict in Tamil Nadu feels like a microcosm of something bigger happening in India, this push and pull between preserving regional languages and the dominance of English in a globalized world.
Yeah, it really is. We're seeing this play out all over the world, this tension between preserving those traditions and languages and the homogenizing forces of globalization. How do you hold on to your unique identity in a world that's becoming more and more interconnected?
Yeah, it's like this tug of war between
Yeah.
progress and tradition. On the one hand, you have this clear advantage to learning English. It opens up economic and social opportunities. But on the other hand, you have the cultural richness and heritage embodied in these regional languages like Tamil.
Absolutely. And we can't forget that language isn't just about communication.
Right.
It's tied to identity, to a sense of belonging. And when a language is marginalized, it can have a huge impact on the communities that speak it.
Right.
It can lead to feelings of alienation and even limit economic opportunities.
So the stakes are pretty high here.
Yeah.
What are the long-term consequences if this conflict continues to simmer?
Yeah.
What happens if Tamil Nadu feels like their concerns are being ignored, that their cultural identity is under attack?
It's a valid concern, and it's something India has grappled with before. If the central government is seen as insensitive to the linguistic and cultural needs of non-Hindi speaking states, it could fuel resentment and, even separatist sentiments. It's a reminder that unity cannot come at the expense of diversity.
So how do we find that balance? How do we navigate this complex landscape
Right.
of language identity and national unity?
I think the key is to shift our mindset. Instead of seeing diversity as a problem to be solved, we need to embrace it as a strength.
Hmm.
India's linguistic diversity is a source of richness and beauty. It's part of what makes the country so unique.
So it sounds like you're advocating for a more bottom-up approach to language policy, one that considers the needs and aspirations of different linguistic communities rather than just imposing a top-down solution.
Exactly. And it requires open and honest dialogue. We need to create spaces where people can, express their concerns and work together to find solutions that respect both, national unity and those regional identities.
We've taken a deep dive into this really fiery debate, and I'm left with a mix of hope and concern hope, because this conflict has forced this conversation about the importance of linguistic diversity,
Hmm?
but concern, because the stakes are high.
Yeah.
What's your final takeaway for our listeners? What should they be thinking about as they follow this story?
I would say this language is more than just words. It's the soul of a culture. And protecting and promoting linguistic diversity isn't just about preserving the past. It's about nurturing the heart of what makes India such a vibrant and multifaceted nation. And for that to happen, we need empathy, understanding, and a willingness to listen to each other.
That's beautifully put. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the complexities of this fascinating issue. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the heart of Tamil Nadu's political landscape.